When sophomore year began, I was still fighting acne, awkward limbs, and a gnawing sense of insecurity, dangling in that strange space where freedom was visible, but always just out of reach. The new high school felt like a sprawling city compared to the comfort of middle school, yet somehow, like every other kid tossed into the maze, I figured out the hallways after only a few wrong turns. Even before summer ended, we'd been handed sign-up sheets for high school clubs, band, drama, debate, you name it. Most kids treated the list like a piece of junk mail and tossed it, but not me. I wanted in. I wanted to belong to something. I read the whole thing line by line, checked a few boxes, and without hesitation put drama first, computer club second. Computers were my comfort zone, and I figured being in a room full of other kids who actually knew what they were doing might be fun. I turned in the form at the office, feeling, for once, like I had a plan. My name's Kevin. At the time, I stood 5'4", weighed maybe 115 pounds, and was the only child of an upper-middle-class family. Mom was an attorney, Dad ran his own business. I didn't give the form a second thought, assuming we'd hear back after the first week of school. And we did, though, not the way I expected. Drama club? Accepted. But right below it, to my horror, ballet and dance troupe. I nearly fell over. It had to be a mistake. But when I marched to the office to protest, the secretary pulled out my own application, and there it was. A check mark squarely in the ballet and dance row. My eyes shot to the line below, where computer club sat mocking me. I'd checked the wrong box. I argued, of course, but they said every club counted toward credit hours. No switching until next year. If I refused, I'd have to repeat the whole year because the clubs were tied to graduation requirements. Check. And mate. Resigned, I went to meet the teacher in charge. The second I saw her, all righteous indignation drained out of me. Deborah Watson, tall, graceful, dark hair framing those deep brown eyes, moved with a kind of effortless femininity that spiked my teenage hormones into chaos. The class was all girls except me and Gary, who had always been different. Even in grade school, he favored pastel sweaters and a certain light step, so seeing him here was no surprise. He fit right in. I stuck out like a sore thumb. Most of the girls had years of ballet behind them. I had 2 left feet and a stubborn chip on my shoulder. Ms. Watson clocked my reluctance instantly, but we both knew we were stuck, so she went easy on me. Dad laughed when he heard. Mom called it sweet, and I just tried to survive without too many guys finding out. At first, the one perk was the view rows of leotards and tights that left very little to the imagination. That lasted until the day Ms. Watson announced Gary and I would need to wear the exact same uniform. "It's about form and discipline," she said with a smile that left no room for argument. Gary shrugged, but I balked hard. It didn't matter. By the end of the week, I was at a dance shop with Mom, enduring the humiliation of being fitted for a leotard, tights, and God help me something the saleswoman called a gaff. Back home, Mom insisted I try it all on before dinner. Alone in my room, I wrestled with the gaff until I figured out its purpose. The effect was unsettling. My front looked smooth, almost too smooth. Pulling on the tights, then the leotard, I turned toward the mirror and froze. Aside from the absence of a chest, I could have passed for a girl at a quick glance. I tugged my hair free from its usual ponytail, let it brush my shoulders, and the illusion deepened in a way that made my stomach flip. Mom came back with the shoes' 2-inch square heels that gave my legs a shape I couldn't deny, looked good. She seemed delighted. I braced for her to suggest makeup, but she didn't. As I started peeling everything off, she stopped me. "It's nearly dinner. Wait a second." She disappeared and returned holding a skirt. "Since you're so self-conscious about that smooth front, this'll hide it. And you're not going anywhere, so who's going to know?" "Moom! That's a skirt." "Do I have to wear it?" "No," she said, "but it'll cover you up and honestly, you'd look adorable." Against every better instinct, I stepped into it. I'd only slipped on that skirt for Mom's sake, but the effect was undeniable. It pushed the whole illusion into dangerous territory. Every step made me hyper-aware of how convincingly I could pass, and when I caught that faraway, almost longing look in Mom's eyes, I knew exactly what it meant. She'd always wanted a daughter, and here I was, standing in her kitchen like some stand-in for the real thing. The way she looked at me made my skin prickle. We went down to dinner, and Dad's reaction was exactly what I feared. "You make a lovely girl, Kevin. Better than I would have imagined." "Don't pick on her, dear," Mom countered smoothly. "This is all new, and she'll need time to adjust." "Her? She'll?" The words hung there, making me even more conscious of how the outfit erased the boy I was supposed to be. Mom caught my expression, but brushed it off, then reminded me I was still on dish duty. The second the plates were dry, I bolted to my room and changed faster than I thought humanly possible. By Monday, I was back in the nightmare for real, taking my leotard to class, and right there on top of the bag, the skirt. At least I got to change in Ms. Watson's office. I put everything on except the skirt, trying to keep what little dignity I had left, then walked out into the studio. Gary was still in street clothes, standing nose to nose with Ms. Watson. "Listen," he snapped. "I'm gay, not crazy. I'm not dressing like a girl. Fail me if you want, I'm out." "As you wish," she replied without blinking. Gary stormed out, leaving me the lone guy in a sea of leotards. And honestly, if you didn't notice the flat chest, you'd have had trouble spotting the difference. Ms. Watson moved on without comment, starting us on simple steps. I surprised myself by catching on quickly, maybe because the girls kept steadying me, making sure I kept time. The frosted glass door meant no one outside could see me like this, and afterward, I'd retreat to her office again to change, dodging the boys' restroom entirely. By the end of the week, I was not comfortable, but less panicked. The girls never teased, never pointed out how much I blended in. I clung to that mercy. Then came Monday. Ms. Watson had us sit in a semicircle, her expression telling me, before her words did, that something big was coming. "Our performance schedule was set this summer by the school board," she began, locking eyes with me, "before any of you applied. Many of you are also in drama club, which works well because we'll be doing CanCon this year. As the dance class, we'll perform all the dance scenes. The costumes are elaborate, and with a class this small, everyone gets a role." Another look straight at me. "That includes you, Kevin." She passed around costume references, low-cut bodices, frothy petticoats, short skirts in front, high heels on every dancer. My stomach dropped. "But I can't wear that," I blurted, desperation creeping in. "And why not?" Melanie shot back. "You think we want to? We don't." "Yeah, but you're girls. Who's going to know you're not? Look at you couple pads and you'd vanish right into the lineup. Tell me I'm wrong." I couldn't. I slumped back in my chair, trapped. "On top of that," she continued, "you signed up for this class. You can't let us down." "Girls, settle," Ms. Watson said, though her gaze stayed on me, softened by something almost like regret. "There's more. Can-Can is a very feminine dance, but will also require all dancers to act in the play. You'll have to look feminine and act feminine." The bottom dropped out of my stomach. "What does that mean?" She waved the others to go change, then pointed me into her office. Once the door closed, she leaned against the desk. "Kevin, after a long discussion with the senior staff, we've decided that for you to truly inhabit the role, you should begin dressing as a girl full-time." "What? Are you insane? Out there, I'd get destroyed." "We've thought of that. The principal and school board will treat you as a transfer student on paper. You'll be a new girl in school. Only we'll know the truth. You're nearly the same size as the others. You have the hair, and you've already started class. If you begin next week, you'll slip right into the role you'll need to play." She stopped then, watching me, waiting for the impossible answer. "I'll call your mother tonight and arrange it," Ms. Watson said, her tone final. Back in the studio, the girls were already in their street clothes, waiting. She addressed them with deliberate calm. Because of circumstances beyond Kevin's control, and due to the school's needs, certain suggestions have been made. Starting Monday, we'll have a new girl in class. Every gaze landed squarely on me. I know you've all figured out that the new girl will be Kevin, she continued. So hear me now, if a single word of this leaves this room, I will find out who talked. You will fail this class, and you'll repeat the year. Am I clear? One by one, they nodded. Good. I expect you to help her overcome her shyness. Any questions? Silence. I left the classroom in a fog, reeling at the idea. Less than 2 weeks into the school year, I'd be walking into class in a dress. My brain looped through visions of disaster whispers, laughter, the kind of ridicule you never shake off. By the time I got home, I'd worked myself into a frenzy, halfway ready to quit school altogether. Of course I didn't. I was too young, too scared, and too trapped. Mom was waiting in the kitchen. Ms. Watson explained everything. I know how you feel, so I'm not going to force you. But before you say no, let me fix you up. Just once. If it doesn't work, that's the end of it. If it does, maybe think about it. The school's gone to a lot of trouble to make this possible. It could even be fun. She had me. What if I look like a total dork? Then I'll call Ms. Watson myself and tell her your father and I decided against it. She'll have to accept that, and you won't be penalized. But if you look good. She let the thought dangle. And after the play? How do I go back to being a boy? I don't know, honey. Let's play it by ear. But for now, why don't we shop for a couple outfits? Just enough for the weekend. I'll do your nails, makeup, hair. Every instinct screamed no. But another, quieter voice reminded me I'd never be a jock, couldn't pass as one of the rocks, and was otherwise just a forgettable face in the hall. And I wouldn't be alone. I'd have at least 7 allies, my dance classmates, and access to the girls' spaces no boy ever saw. That last thought snuck in and, before I realized, had me grinning, then nodding. Mom smiled like she'd just won a bet, grabbed her purse, and whisked me off to shop for girls' clothes. I trailed her like a shadow, praying no one from school would see me. She was all efficiency. Bra, 34A, a pack of panties, a slip holding each up for my opinion, while my face burned then breast forms, subtle and flesh-toned. Leaving lingerie didn't save me. In dresses, she picked a soft A-line, then a skirt and blouse combo. Pantyhose. Shoes, plain taupe flats, and black low heels. I didn't argue, just knew I'd be wearing them all before the night was over. At home, she took me straight to my room, had me strip, then handed me the gaff. Once in place, it was panties, the bra with its padded secrets, pantyhose, shoes, and finally the dress. As she zipped me up, I glanced at the mirror and stopped breathing. She said nothing, just took my hand and led me to her vanity. Foundation, powder, lipstick light, careful strokes. Then she brushed my hair, slid in a headband, and clipped on earrings. I swallowed hard, staring at the stranger in the mirror, hoping it was some trick of light, some lie told by polished glass. But the reflection didn't blink. It was me, and it wasn't. The reflection staring back at me erased any illusion I'd been clinging to. I wasn't taller, broader, or smaller than the girls in my class. My frame matched theirs almost exactly. My legs jutted from under the hem of the dress, pale and bare, and the small swell of breasts pressed against the fabric, just like theirs did. But what shook me most was my face, how effortlessly Mom had softened its edges, bringing out features I'd never realized I had. It wasn't the boy I'd seen every day of my life. It was someone else entirely. She said nothing, just let me take it in. When I finally looked her way, my throat tightened. It felt like nature had been holding my masculinity together with duct tape, and she just peeled it off in one pull. If a change of clothes could dismantle it so easily, How much of a boy was I? Really? The sadness hit hard, like something had been stolen in a game I never got to play fairly. And yet, underneath, there was another feeling, quieter but undeniable. If this much could be done with so little, I could pass as a girl at school. The thought came tangled in problems. Kids would notice if I suddenly disappeared as Kevin and returned as someone else, only to vanish and reappear as Kevin again. No one's that oblivious. But one look between Mom and me, and I knew it was decided. "What do we call you?" she asked. "What? We can't exactly introduce you as Kevin." "Oh, I don't know. If you'd been born a girl, we were going to name you Catherine. Want to use that?" "I guess. But, Mom, look at me. Just look at me." "I am looking. And I wasn't as surprised as you think. We barely did anything padding, a dress, some makeup, a headband, and this is the result. You're actually quite cute, whether you want to admit it or not." Her voice shifted from matter-of-fact to brisk. "Now, let's quit moping and go make dinner. Your father will want to meet his new daughter." Walking in the dress felt alien at first, but keeping my hands busy setting the table, chopping vegetables made me forget, if only for minutes at a time. The real test came when Dad stepped through the door, only to stop dead. "Mary, who's this beautiful little girl, and why is she in our house?" "This is Catherine, your daughter." "I see. So this is what my daughter looks like." He didn't sound angry, but the heat in my cheeks didn't fade through dinner. Later, in my room, I stripped down to bra and panties and caught sight of myself in the mirror. My waist wasn't narrow, my hips weren't wide, but even stripped to the basics, the illusion clung to me. And for the first time, that little fantasy about girls' locker rooms didn't seem so thrilling because I'd looked just like them. I washed up, changed into pajamas, and lay in bed, replaying the day the way the fabric moved, the ease with which Mom had transformed me. Oddly, I didn't once think about how the guys might treat me. I just kept circling back to the fact that on Monday, I'd walk into school as Kathy. And a strange part of me believed I could pull it off. The next day, I kept quiet in class. A few girls gave me curious looks, like they wanted to ask if I'd done the full transformation yet. But I kept my mouth shut. Why tempt fate? Maybe the school would burn down. Maybe I'd wake up from this bizarre dream. No one said anything, and I ended the day knowing it was probably my last as a boy until next year. Mom reminded me that morning what I'd already figured out once I started. There was no going back until summer. I told her I'd do it as long as she promised I could return to being a boy when it was over, and she agreed. When I got home, she wasn't there. I opened my bedroom door and froze. The bedspread and drapes were new, matched in a soft pinkish purple sprinkled with little white flowers. My furniture had been rearranged, and a vanity now stood against the wall, its trim edged in delicate lace. Just as I turned to leave, Mom appeared. "I changed your room a little." "Yeah, I see that. Why?" "I thought it might make you feel more comfortable. And every girl needs a vanity, so I had one delivered this morning." I just stared at her, the truth settling heavy in my gut. My days as Kevin were already over. "I also bought you a few more things," she added casually, "and put them in your closet and dresser." Mom paused in the doorway, her voice calm but firm. "You should learn how to dress yourself, so I'll leave you to it. Just do your best and call me when you're done." "Now?" "You might as well get used to it, Kathy." Then she was gone, leaving me alone with the weight of that name and a closet full of proof that Kevin's days were numbered. I opened the door to a flood of colors, soft reds, pinks, deep blues, greens, neat rows of black and white, muted grays, even mauve. The dresser drawers were just as damning. Bras, panties, pantyhose, slips, none of it. Anything a boy could claim as his own. As I ran my fingers over the thin silken fabrics, something inside me simply let go. Resistance dissolved, replaced by a dull surrender. I undressed slowly, my eyes locked on a flash of pink hanging inside the closet. Without bothering with the gaff, I slipped into a pair of panties, tucking myself away awkwardly. A bra came next, clumsy fingers fumbling until the clasp gave in. The breast forms settled into place like they belonged there. I was reaching for pantyhose when something caught my eye, a padded satin undergarment, oval hips sewn into its sides. The purpose was obvious. I stepped into it and, for the first time, had curves. The pantyhose slid over everything, and the shape of my legs transformed again. A glance at the mirror confirmed it. I looked like a girl. The pink dress was next. It fell over my head, the zipper at my back stubborn until I figured out the angle. At the vanity, I slipped the same headband into my hair and tried my hand at makeup, a little foundation, pale red lipstick. Crude, but effective. White shoes from the closet completed the look. The heels were no higher than my dance shoes, but thinner, daintier. The girl staring back at me was almost a stranger, slim legs, a modest figure, a round neckline framing the swell of breasts, the skirt flaring over new hips. I fastened clip-on earrings, then caught sight of a perfume bottle, wildflowers, a dab at each wrist. The shame came first, a deep flush that burned in my chest. But underneath it, something lighter, almost giddy. There was no question I could pass as a girl. The question was whether I could live as one in front of everyone. Walking in the heels was easy. The sound of them on the hardwood floor was unsettling, too familiar from years of hearing Mom's shoes. I followed the noise down the hall, stairs, into the kitchen empty. Voices drifted from the front porch. Without thinking, I opened the door. Mom stood there, chatting with Ms. Watson. "Kathy, there you are," Mom said, holding out her hand. "Come say hi to Ms. Watson." I stepped outside, heart pounding, and stayed close to her side. "Kathy," Ms. Watson said warmly, "you're beautiful. Turn around so I can see." I did, keeping my shoulder pressed to Mom's. "If your mother hadn't told me, I never would have known," she added. I couldn't meet her eyes, too embarrassed, though it was strangely reassuring to hear someone besides Mom say I looked convincing. We said goodbye, and back inside, Mom announced, "Your father's taking us out to dinner tonight. What you have on is fine, but let's touch up your makeup and do something different with your hair." I didn't argue. She removed the headband, replacing it with barrettes on each side, brushed my hair forward into bangs, and trimmed them. In the mirror, I watched her shape me even further away from the boy I'd been. She showed me how to layer blue and gray eyeshadow, guided me through shaky attempts at eyeliner, brushed soft color onto my cheeks. The earrings came off, replaced with small pearls framed in gold. A matching choker circled my neck, light but impossible to ignore. A fresh coat of lipstick sealed it. In the tall mirror, I saw someone older, poised, and quietly feminine looking back at me. Mom left to change for dinner, and I stayed there, staring, trying to decide whether the girl in the glass was still me at all. From the moment I'd learned I'd have to dress as a girl to that exact second in the mirror, it struck me how effortlessly everyone around me seemed to accept it. Mom had always wanted a daughter, sure, but she'd never once asked me to dress this way. Yet her every action since the rapid makeover of my bedroom, the softness in her voice, the way she looked at me, made it clear she wanted this to happen. And she'd told me I could still say no before Monday. She'd back me. Ms. Watson was another puzzle. She had to have known about the all-girl chorus line from the start, yet she'd waited until I was firmly stuck in the class to tell me. The girls in my dance group had promised to keep the secret, but I knew just how fast gossip bled through the walls of a high school. That alone could have been my out, if I wanted it. But staring at myself in the glass, something shifted. I'd never admit it out loud, but I liked the way I looked. Long legs, an average but balanced figure, a face that, with a bit of makeup, carried a softness I'd never imagined. The scent of foundation, the faint sweetness of lipstick, the way the dress brushed my skin, it all hit me at once. And for the first time, I realized I wouldn't mind being a girl at all. I straightened my posture, smiled at my reflection, gave my hair a quick flick, grabbed my white purse, and headed downstairs. Mom was already in the family room, stunning as always in a black sheath dress with short sleeves, her hair styled like mine, pearls at her throat. She sat beside me without a word. Dad came home 10 minutes later. One glance, and his eyes widened, then narrowed slightly before settling into a polite smile. No comments, just a quiet escort to dinner. He admitted on the way he was surprised at how little effort it had taken to transform me, and even called me a pretty girl, though I figured that was just fatherly politeness. Walking into the restaurant on Mom's arm was nerve-wracking, but no one spared me a second look. That tiny victory gave me confidence, even if Dad's expression stayed cautious. While we waited for food, Mom pressed him for a real opinion. He surprised me by saying he'd always wondered what it would be like to have a daughter, and that the choice was mine. "I'm going to do it," I told them. "The girls in my class are counting on me, and I guess I look okay." "Are you sure?" Dad asked. "Once you start, you can't quit when the play's done. The confusion at school, the cost at home." "I know. I'm doing it." No one said another word. Dinner went smoothly. On the way to the ladies' room, Mom leaned close. "Tomorrow morning, we're going to the salon to style your hair, touch up your lipstick." By the time we left, Dad's smile seemed genuine again. At home, we watched TV until bed. Lying in the dark, the faint scent of perfume clung to me, bringing back that mirror image with startling clarity. The thought didn't repulse me anymore, it pulled at me. I wanted to look as much like a girl as possible. I drifted off, imagining skirts swirling around my legs, blouses stretching gently over my chest, the possibility that maybe my life might fit better this way. Morning came. My makeup attempt was smoother than the day before, my hair left loose to frame my face just so. I chose a plain gray skirt, white blouse, and flats. Mom approved. After breakfast, we drove to her salon. She'd promised no perm, just a cut and style. True enough, but they also lightened my hair to a softer blonde and worked in a subtle curl. When it was over, I sat flipping through magazines while Mom had her turn. One picture caught my eye, a girl my age with nails painted a glossy, perfect pink. I imagined my own fingers like that, delicate and polished. A woman approached, introduced herself, and guided me to a small table. "Let's do your nails," she said. I held up the magazine. "Can you make them like this?" By the time we left the salon, I was transformed far beyond anything I'd expected. My hair was a lighter, softer blonde, cut into a more feminine shape. My nails were glossy pink perfection. My ears newly pierced. My brows reshaped into a graceful arch that made my eyes seem wider, brighter. One look in the mirror, and I knew it wasn't just that I liked the way I looked anymore. I loved it. I didn't tell Mom, but I had the feeling she could see it anyway. We grabbed lunch, then she suggested a trip to the mall, just to round out your wardrobe and pick up some makeup of my own. The idea didn't fill me with dread, this time I was excited. She let me choose what I wanted, guiding me toward jeans and slacks alongside the skirts and dresses I gravitated toward. A few blouses, 3 more pairs of shoes, and we were hauling bags back to the car. Next stop was a cosmetics store. The air inside was thick with scents, powdery, floral, exotic. A saleswoman settled me in front of a mirror and worked quickly, stripping away Mom's darker tones and replacing them with shades that actually suited me. Foundation that didn't mask but matched, blush that warmed without shouting, a sweep of subtle shadow, softer eyeliner, and lips painted the same delicate pink as my nails. When she finished, the change was striking. I looked fresher, more real. Mom smiled faintly, then bought the full set of everything the woman had used. From there, it was on to a jewelry store for a small opal ring, then a costume shop where I indulged in earrings, barrettes, headbands, and bracelets. As we were leaving, Mom glanced at me and said, It's obvious you like being a girl. Want to do it right? What do you mean? Don't I look okay? You look fine, Kathy, but you'll be dressing this way every day. In certain situations, it might be better if, well, your boobs didn't fall out in your hand. We could get forms you attach more realistic, permanent. That made sense immediately, and I agreed without hesitation. She found an address in the phone book, and soon we were in a specialty shop being greeted by a woman named Janet. Minutes later, I was bare from the waist up as she fitted me with silicone forms so lifelike there was no visible seam. No hint they weren't mine. They warmed against my skin and, Janet promised, would last 2 months before needing to be reapplied, and after a few days, they'd even transmit touch. Getting my bra on over them was awkward, but once I was dressed again, I could feel the gentle bounce with every step. I loved it. Back home, I decided to change into jeans and a plain pink top. The denim hugged my hips and thighs in a way that left no question about my shape, and the top clung lightly to my new chest. Sneakers on, I headed outside. No one would connect me to Kevin now. I took Mom's bike from the garage and pedaled down the street. I passed Bill the brat from down the block, Mr. Keller, hosing down his car, and Jill, the gorgeous girl 2 years older than me. I turned a corner, looping back toward home, when I saw Stephen, an old friend. His eyes flicked over me, and that crooked grin spread across his face. I smiled back, but kept moving. He caught up, trailing me, until I turned into our driveway. He stopped in the street, watching me wheel the bike into the garage and slip inside. When I told Mom, she just shrugged. "You'll have to cope. If you want, you can tell people you're a niece." I decided against that. It sounded too flimsy to work. Dad was home and in a good mood. He said my hair and makeup looked great, and for once, he seemed genuinely at ease. We didn't tell him about the breast forms. Sunday morning, I wore a dark blue dress with white polka dots to church. My parents introduced me as Kathy, avoiding any mention of our real relationship. Back home, I changed into the same jeans and top, more comfortable now than ever in the skin I was wearing. Melanie showed up unannounced that Sunday afternoon, hopping out of her mom's car with a grin. "Hi, I saw you at church this morning, and when I asked, Mom said I could come over." Her eyes swept over me from head to toe. "I knew you'd be cute, but wow." "Thanks, Melanie. Name's Kathy, by the way." We asked Dad if we could take both bikes, and soon we were riding through the neighborhood, me on Mom's, Melanie on Dad's. She was in jeans and a top, same as me, and for a while it felt like just two girls cruising. Then we passed Stephen again, and this time he had his cousin Frank with him. We sailed right by, but Melanie craned her neck. "That Frank sure is a hunk, Kathy." "Frank? He's a doofus," I said automatically. I learned more about Melanie in that ride than in all the time I'd known her, especially the way she lit up talking about boys. It was a glimpse into a perspective I'd never really shared before. Back at the house, Mom fixed us a light dinner, and Dad drove her home. She promised to keep my secret, and I promised I'd see her in the morning. Monday, my first day as Kathy. I wore a navy skirt with a crisp white blouse, a sweater draped over my shoulders, fastened at the neck with a small clasp. The principal didn't blink, just handed me a stack of forms, and minutes later, a brand new student ID badge photo included, my new name printed underneath. The badge was mandatory. No one could attend without one. Now mine said Catherine instead of Kevin. Walking into my first class, 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Most of them belonged to people who'd known me as a boy. My pulse spiked, but no one recognized me. By the end of my second class, the fear had faded. In dance, a few girls gasped outright when they saw me. They'd sat beside me in other classes that morning without realizing who I was. Changing into my dance outfit, I didn't sneak into Ms. Watson's office this time. I went with the rest into the ladies' room, skirt and all. No questions, no drama. For the first time, class felt natural. I wasn't the boy anymore. I was just one of them. The days began to blend. The girls kept my secret, and I started to settle into the rhythm along with the new reality of boys noticing me. I learned fast what bra snapping felt like. It hurt, and that it was meant as flirting. Stephen did it twice, and the second time I spun and smacked him without thinking. That night, Mom explained his interest. I didn't want to hear it. I liked being a girl, but boys weren't on my radar. Soon, even outside dance, girls treated me as one of their own. I caught myself chatting about makeup shades, hair products, new fashion finds slipping into their world without realizing it. About a month in, Kelly invited me to a pajama party. At first, my mind went to the obvious teenage fantasy of half-dressed girls everywhere until it hit me. I'd have to change clothes, right there with them. I told Mom after I'd already said yes. Her reaction was instant. "Kathy, you have no idea what goes on at a pajama party. How are you planning to hide yourself?" "I don't really need the gaff most of the time. Things stay in place, okay?" And I look. "All it takes is one slip, Kathy." She paused, frowning. "We'll have to do something better than tucking." I thought she meant new shapewear. Instead, within an hour, I was lying in an exam room, feet in stirrups, Mom and a doctor on either side. I didn't feel a thing during the procedure, but when I stood afterward, I understood. Even with my legs spread, there was no trace of what had been there, just a smooth, narrow slit framed by hair. "Your body will function fine," the doctor said evenly, "but like all women, you'll need to sit from now on." "Big deal," I muttered. "I already do that except at home." "You'll also need to take care of yourself differently. Your mother can explain that." He pressed firmly in my groin, asked if it hurt. It didn't. I dressed, noticing immediately how the absence changed my balance, even the way I walked. Every step felt different now, lighter somehow, yet irrevocably altered. Sliding into the passenger seat, I noticed my knees came together naturally, now something I used to have to think about. That's when it hit me. In almost every practical way, I was a girl. There was nothing left for anyone to discover, because there was nothing to hide. The thought settled over me like a strange kind of calm. I even knew when I'd prove it to myself, and to anyone who still doubted. At Kelly's pajama party, I'd change clothes in front of the other girls without a second thought. On the way home, Mom said we'd need to have a talk. I figured it was going to be about sex, though I couldn't see the point sure. I looked the part now, but I wasn't really capable of it, was I? When we got back, she led me into her bedroom and went into painstaking detail about feminine hygiene. The whole conversation made me squirm until she laughed and warned me that forgetting would teach me a painful lesson I'd never want to repeat. Curiosity got the better of me when she left the room. I let my fingertips trace the smooth slit, and when they slipped inside just slightly, a shiver of awareness went through me, alien and electric. I wasn't a fraud in a costume anymore. I was a girl from head to toe. At Kelly's party, the moment came without fanfare. Melanie happened to be in the bathroom when I changed my panties. I'm sure she saw, but she didn't say a word. The party itself was a whirlwind of gossip and laughter, almost all of it about boys. I had nothing to add, so I just listened until Jill announced that Stephen had a crush on me. That set off a wave of teasing I couldn't quite fend off. In dance class, I'd grown used to the fluffy costumes, the bounce of my breasts with each movement. The novelty wore off for everyone else, too. The girls stopped watching me like a science experiment, and I started picking up the unspoken cues. They all seemed to know how to welcome or deflect a boy's attention, how to flirt or freeze them out. At first, I clung to the idea that I had no interest in boys. But that resolve weakened as more of the girls paired off, went on dates, and whispered about them afterward. The truth was, I didn't want to be left out. Stephen's attention made him the obvious choice. Coyness didn't come naturally, but within days, he asked to walk me home. I worried he might question why I lived in the same house he'd visited back when I was Kevin. But either he'd been told, or he'd decided for himself I was Kathy now, and he never asked. After a week of walks, he finally blurted out an invitation to the movies. His words stumbled, his face turned red, and when I said yes, he bolted down the hallway, whooping like an idiot. I just stood there, stunned I'd accepted a date. The shock gave way to a kind of soaring elation. I'd crossed some invisible line. I wasn't just a boy playing dress-up anymore, I was a girl that a boy liked enough to ask out. I realized it wasn't the clothes or the makeup that made me one. It was how I carried myself, how I interacted, how I'd let the role shape me until it stopped being an act. By the time I got home, my emotions were a tangled mess, half thrilled, half uncertain. I told Mom, tears slipping out before I could stop them. I braced for surprise, maybe even disapproval, but she just smiled warmly. "I'm so glad for you, Kathy. Now you'll have someone to take you to the dances and parties." "But I'm not." "Yes, honey, you are. We all know it. It's been 2 months since the doctor made you look more normal, and you've taken on every mannerism of the girls your age. You talk like them, act like them. You've had your hair and nails done twice. You use makeup better than I do, and all your friends know you only as Kathy. You wear short skirts and tight tops, giggle and laugh like the others. You call your father Daddy and play him like a violin, and you had your ears pierced." Mom's words hung in the air, sharp, clear, impossible to dodge. "On top of all that, deep inside you know there's no way you'll ever be a boy again, because you don't want to, right?" I looked at her, wondering how she'd nailed it so perfectly. She was right. I did like everything about being a girl. In dance, I'd worked hard to match the others in every detail, so much so that I hadn't noticed when imitation turned into instinct. I joined the girls for after-school aerobics, even dared to shower with them. What I once thought would thrill me, seeing them naked, barely registered anymore. I didn't want to look at them. I wanted to be them. Dad had softened, too. About a month back, he started treating me like a daughter protective, attentive in a way I wasn't used to. Mom and I traded a knowing look before I smiled and fled to my room. No need to hand her the satisfaction of hearing me say she was right. I told Dad about my date with Stephen, and he promptly set my first curfew. He insisted on meeting Stephen at the door, then let us go. We were both jittery the whole evening, but on my porch afterward, Stephen didn't hesitate. He pulled me close and kissed me right on the lips. I let him, tasting the faint sweetness of soda on his breath, smelling the faint trace of soap and boy. When he stepped back, I slipped inside, leaning against the door, breathless. That night, I replayed every moment, smiling into my pillow. The play's run stretched over a month, 4 shows a week, 2 on weekends, until the whole school seemed to know about it. Ms. Watson told me a board member had asked her to identify the boy in her class. She'd refused flatly. "All my students are girls," she'd said. Stephen walked me home after every performance. At some point, his hand found mine, and I didn't mind. By the end, we were going steady, and the shyness between us had thinned into a kind of playful boldness. We'd kissed enough to leave us both a little dazed, but never more than that. As the school year settled, so did I. Stephen was on the student governing board, and together we had the kind of status high school feeds on. When the sign-up sheets came around again, I checked ballet dance deliberately and added cheerleader for good measure. The first week after school let out, Dad called me into his office. "We've talked to the doctor, Kathy, but I want to hear it from you. You're never going to be a boy again, are you?" I didn't even pause. "Heck no, not now, not when I have everything I ever wanted." "Then it's settled. We're starting you on hormone therapy. You'll develop your own breasts, your hips will widen, your waist will narrow, your body hair will disappear, and your skin will soften. By the time you're of age, you'll be like all your friends and ready for surgery if you want it. Your first appointment's tomorrow." That was Dad direct, decisive. My chest felt tight with excitement. By morning, it was happening. All summer, between shifts at Dad's office, the changes began. My chest filled to a modest A cup, my hips shaped enough to ditch the padding. Mom and I kept it between us. By fall, I was a cheerleader, Stephen was class president, and together we were perched at the top of the school's social pyramid. When Stephen's hand slipped under my sweater one afternoon, I let it. The decision felt right. I stayed in dance another year, then switched to a co-op program for my senior year to keep working at the office. Ms. Watson became Mrs. Benson, Melanie got pregnant, and Stephen and I crossed another line together. It was an eventful year, but graduation was already in my sights along with 18, and the last step toward being the woman I decided to become. If everything I'd been through had made me tougher, it also made me clearer. Nature, I'd learned, has a way of nudging you into what you're meant to be: plumber, lawyer, worker, or woman. The conflicts, the doubts, the stumbles, they were just stepping stones to the truth. And now, that truth was mine to live. I'm in love. Not the dizzy, short-lived crush I once thought it would be, but something warmer, steadier, rooted deep in the person I've become. Stephen is on his way over, and my heart feels like it's both racing and standing still. I've played the scene over in my mind. How I'll look at him, how I'll find the courage to let the words slip free, how I'll tell him exactly what he means to me. For so long, my life has been a story about change, about finding the shape that fits, the voice that feels true. Somewhere along the way, Stephen became part of that truth. He's seen me grow into the girl I am, treated me like I've always been her, and maybe that's why this feels so right. The moment's close now. I hear the sound of tires outside, the slam of a car door. He's here. My pulse hammers in my ears as I smooth my skirt, take a breath, and open the door. Time to tell him. The end. The